Tier 1. Behind bars. Life really does come at you fast. One minute you're a hotshot music executive having a relaxing evening in a Manhattan hotel, and the next, you're behind bars, awaiting trial for some really heinous crimes. That's exactly what happened to Sean John Combs, aka Puff Daddy, aka Brother Love, aka Puffy, aka Diddy. Yeah, we'll just call him Diddy. On Monday, the 16th of September 2024, Diddy was arrested in New York after a grand jury indicted him. If we're being honest, the guy kind of had it coming. At the time of the arrest, the indictment was sealed, so the music mogul and his legal team didn't know what he was being charged with until the next morning. On Tuesday, the 17th, Diddy appeared in court with his lawyers, where it was revealed that he was accused of running a racketeering conspiracy involving sex trafficking, abuse, forced labor, bribery, and just about every other criminal activity you can think of, with the exception of murder. The gist of the matter is that federal prosecutors believe Diddy is a dangerous man who went through some very evil lengths to fulfill his desires, and that he did it by using his status, money, and power. They also believe that some of his employees helped him commit these crimes. I mean, who else was going to carry 1,000 bottles of baby oil? After hearing the charges against him, Diddy pled not guilty, and his lawyers got to work trying to get him out on bail. But it turns out the judge had no love for Brother Love because he was denied bail twice, even after he offered to pay a $50 million bond. 1,000 bottles of baby oil. This is by far one of the most bizarre aspects of the Diddy case. And that's saying something, seeing how it just came out that the guy allegedly roofied people with horse tranquilizer. But I digress. Back in March, the Fed raided 2 of Diddy's mansions and tore up the place. The search was intense. They ripped apart couches and punched holes in the walls, but no one knew for sure what they found until the indictment. According to the unsealed documents, authorities recovered a bunch of digital evidence, firearms, hard drugs, and around 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricants from Diddy's mansions. In case you were wondering, no, he was not by any chance running a large-scale daycare operation out of his home. In fact, the baby oil had nothing to do with babies and everything to do with Diddy's freak-offs, which, by the way, is code for really crazy parties where bad things happened. Right after the world found out about Diddy's secret baby oil stash, his attorneys launched Operation Damage Control, but it kind of backfired. Mark Agnifilo, one of Diddy's attorneys, sat down with Harry Levin from TMZ to discuss the situation, and boy did things get out of hand. First, Agnifilo tried to downplay Diddy's freak-offs by suggesting that they were just harmless threesomes. He said, back when I was a kid in the late 70s, they were called threesomes. As you can imagine, it didn't take long for the baby oil stash to come up. When asked about it, Agnifilo said he didn't know where the number came from. He then went on to say that the U.S. attorney was probably exaggerating and acted like he had no idea what baby oil had to do with anything. Sure, buddy. The interviewer wasn't letting Agnifilo off the hook that easily. So, with a straight face, he explained that people were suggesting Diddy was using the oil as, well, lube. In response, Agnifilo said it's perfectly normal for rich people like Diddy who have big houses to buy in bulk, and that people buy weird stuff from Costco all the time. Small problem. Costco doesn't even sell baby oil at any of their US locations. So much for that angle. All white parties. Back in the day, Diddy's parties were all the rage. Everyone was talking about them, and all the industry insiders were attending them. But the real showstopper was his annual all-white parties. The all-white gatherings kicked off in 1998, and Diddy must have been doing something right because they became a yearly tradition. The guest lists for these things were filled with A-list celebrities, the likes of Ashton Kutcher, Jennifer Lopez, Paris Hilton, Mariah Carey, Usher, and Jay-Z. They all gathered in luxurious locations wearing all-white outfits to party like there was no tomorrow. Over the years, people have had some crazy things to say about Diddy's parties. One celebrity photographer claims it wasn't unusual to see naked people just hanging around. And she might have been onto something, because in a 2014 episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, after a night out partying with Diddy, Khloe Kardashian confirmed that there were naked people everywhere. So the man liked to hang out with naked people. That's creepy, but not illegal. Unfortunately, that's not all. The real fun, or in this case, questionable activity, usually began at midnight, when most of the guests had left. You didn't think Diddy was using all that lube by himself, did you? Freak-offs. The authorities have been pretty tight-lipped about what the indictment calls Diddy's freak-offs, but a few details have slipped through. Here's what we know. Depending on who you ask, these so-called freak-offs usually went down right after his all-white parties. Some folks even think Diddy stopped throwing those altogether just to focus on planning his freak-offs. Who knows? Unlike his all-white parties that were highly publicized and had photographers everywhere, Diddy's freak-offs were kept under the wraps, and they allegedly went on for days. Unlike his all-white parties, which were splashed all over the media with photographers everywhere, Diddy's freak-offs were a more private affair, kept on the down low and rumored to go on for days. They usually went down at his lavish homes, but every now and then, he'd switch things up and host them at some discreet, high-end hotels. You know, just to keep things interesting. The indictment, which by the way is several pages long, describes Diddy's freak-offs as drug-fueled sex parties. Apparently, along with supplying way more lube than anyone could possibly need, Diddy also made sure the booze and illegal drugs were flowing non-stop. Prosecutors believe he did this to keep his guests obedient and receptive to whatever he had planned. It is believed that he liked to call the shots while playing solo, if you get what I mean. When the parties took place in hotels, Diddy's staff would stock the suite with freak-off supplies beforehand. They would also bring in fresh linen sheets and a cleanup kit for when the fun was over. So who was at these parties? Well, Diddy, obviously, and some other pretty powerful men and women, if the rumors are to be believed. To cater to his guests, Diddy would fly in commercial sex workers from all over the world, along with women he'd met at adult clubs. Some of the women he was personally managing even made the list, and if they didn't play along, he'd threaten to ruin their careers. The really dark side of this already dark situation is that apparently not all the participants were willing. A number of people, some of whom were underage at the time, have spoken out, claiming they were coerced or even threatened into participating in certain activities, but we will get to that later. After partying, Diddy and his guests would be so wiped out that they had to receive IV fluids just to bounce back from the physical exertion. Tier 2. Witness accounts. Diddy's freak-offs were overflowing with illegal drugs, so it kind of makes sense that one of the most detailed accounts of what went down at those events would come from a drug dealer. The dealer, who chose to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, said the party was at the music mogul's Hamptons mansion, and that Puffy himself greeted him at the door in a bathrobe like it was just another Tuesday. But it wasn't, and things were about to get crazy. As Puffy led him to a back room to finalize the drug deal, the dealer claims he saw some seriously messy stuff going down. According to him, male rappers were hooking up with each other openly, though he wasn't about to name names. He also noticed that many of the partygoers were already under the influence of controlled substances. At this point, the guy was weirded out, so he wrapped things up and left as quickly as he could. Can't say I blame him. Another person who has spilled the beans about what goes down at a Diddy party is adult entertainer Adria Sherry English. She filed a lawsuit against the rapper shortly before he was charged, and it contains all the details of her encounter with him. Adria began working at Diddy's parties as a go-go dancer between 2004 and 2005, but things didn't get crazy until the third party, when he learned that she used to be an adult film actress. Diddy directed her to entertain some guests away from the main party. And Adria also claims that the alcohol she was served at the party was laced with drugs, because the next morning, when she came to, she didn't even remember how she got home. Tantric lovemaking. Yet another person who has spoken about his experience partying with Diddy is Tom Bryant, the Mirror UK's head of showbiz, or at least he was back in the day. The year was 2007, and Diddy was in Paris sitting down for an interview with Tom in his Bercy Stadium dressing room, which may or may not have had one too many full-size portraits of the rapper lying around. During the interview, Diddy didn't shy away from sharing intimate details about his relationship. At the time, he was dating Kim Porter, and he seemed a little too happy to spill the beans on their love life. At first, he spoke about visiting the Eiffel Tower with Kim and how romantic it was. But then he decided to turn up the heat by sharing details of what happened when they returned to their hotel room. What happened, you ask? Well, the short answer is a 30-hour sex marathon, with whipped cream and strawberries making special appearances. I'm not sure why, but Diddy went on to brag about his sexual prowess. So maybe that's not exactly what he said. When the interview wrapped up, Diddy invited Tom to join him for what he called a Diddy party at a nightclub. Tom, being a good sport, graciously accepted, even though he had no idea what kind of madness he was walking into. The party took place in the club's VIP room, and according to Tom, there were half-naked women everywhere. Moments later, he witnessed one of the scantily dressed women dancing suggestively next to Diddy. Diddy's partner Kim was right there, but she didn't even seem to care. Real-life corn. Diddy's a lot of things, and apparently, corn star is one of them. Rumor has it there's a video making the rounds in Hollywood showing Diddy getting down and dirty with someone even bigger than him in the industry. Ariel Mitchell Kidd, a lawyer who claims to have seen the tape, says it was filmed in Diddy's Atlanta home. She believes the other person in it didn't even know they were being recorded. Honestly, that makes sense, because secret videotaping seems to be just one of Diddy's many creepy hobbies. A Department Homeland Security agent who helped raid his Miami home in March mentions that the 54-year-old had sex rooms set up, complete with adult toys, bondage gear, and hidden cameras. He would then secretly record his guests in action during his freak-offs, and then use the video as blackmail material to make sure they continued to attend. Well, that's one way to keep your guests coming back. Kinky hosting habits. If you thought blackmail was the only questionable thing Diddy did to keep his guests from leaving, think again. In 2002, he appeared on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and as the night progressed, the father of 7 revealed that he was willing to go to some very disturbing lengths to keep his guests around. The night started out innocently enough, with Diddy sharing his recipe for a killer party. Beautiful women, beautiful men, alcohol, water, good music, and no air conditioning. No, seriously, that's exactly what he said. Conan tried to get more details about Diddy's recipe, and that's when things took a wild turn. The music mogul said he had noticed women like to drink water at parties, so he made sure to provide it, because if he didn't, they might just walk out the door. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be a big deal, but then he added that the doors should also be locked. That has got to be illegal. When Conan pointed out that locking people is dangerous, Diddy simply laughed it off, saying it was just a little kinky. He then proceeded to name drop some of his famous party guests, as if he hadn't just confessed to being a creep on live TV. Conan and the audience went along with it, so I guess you could get away with just about anything in 2002. Tier 3. The November 2023 lawsuit. Technically, this isn't the first lawsuit that's been filed against Diddy. He's got a whole collection of those, some dating all the way back to the 90s and early 2000s. But it is the lawsuit that started it all. In 2022, New York passed a law allowing victims of sexual offenses where the statute of limitations had expired to file civil suits against their abusers within a 1-year window. It was called the Adult Survivors Act, and it presented the perfect opportunity for some of Diddy's victims to come forward. The first one to do so was his ex-girlfriend, R&B singer Cassandra Ventura, aka Cassie. She first met Diddy in 2005 when she was only 19 years old and he was 37. Soon after, she signed a deal with his record label, Bad Boy Records, and got romantically involved with him. And that's when shit hit the fan. According to Cassie, Diddy was very controlling. He dictated everything in her life, from what she wore to where she lived, even down to her medical records. It was pretty extreme. On top of being controlling, Diddy was also physically abusive. Cassie claims he hit her multiple times, and some of his employees witnessed these beatings, but were too scared to do anything about it. In one instance, he allegedly kicked her in the face repeatedly, leaving her injured, and then he had his staff hide her in a hotel room so no one would see what happened. In another instance, he attacked her in the hallway of a hotel they were staying at and ended up paying $50,000 to have the surveillance footage erased. Cassie's lawsuit also talked about Diddy's freak-offs. She said he forced her to plan and participate in them, and that they happened pretty often. At these drug-filled parties, he would pair her with male escorts and just stick around to watch and record the whole thing. As time passed, things got so bad for Cassie that she began to rely on drugs just to cope and started thinking unsafe thoughts. Whenever she tried to leave Diddy, he would go after her and they would repeat the same cycle. He also didn't like the idea of her moving on. When he learned that she had briefly been involved with Kid Cudi during one of their rough patches, he blew up the rapper's car. Another time in 2018, when she tried to leave, he broke into her home and assaulted her there. The day after Cassie filed the lawsuit, Diddy released a statement saying they decided to settle out of court. Because of this decision, a lot of the evidence Cassie could have presented will never be seen. But it's clear that there's some truth to her claims. Just months later, CNN released hotel surveillance footage of Diddy attacking Cassie that matched the description of one incident from her lawsuit. Diddy The Director? In the months following Cassie's lawsuit, a bunch of other women came forward with their own stories about Diddy, including a woman named April Lampros. She claimed Diddy drugged and assaulted her over the course of several years. According to April, they first met in 1994 when she was a student at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Fast forward to the next year, and they met for drinks at a bar, but things took a dark turn. She says she was pressured into drinking, probably drugged, and taken back to his place where the assault happened. Afterwards, April tried to cut ties, but Diddy wasn't having it. Instead, he showered her with lavish gifts, flowers, and even a handwritten Valentine's Day card. The guy was really persistent. Unfortunately, things didn't end there. April says Diddy assaulted her again in 1995, and by the following year, he decided to turn things up a notch by bringing in a third party, his then-girlfriend, Kim Porter. To keep it YouTube-friendly, Diddy pressured the two women into taking controlled substances, and then forced them to be together. When April said she didn't want to participate, you guessed it, Diddy threatened to take her job, so she had no choice but to comply. Or at least that's what her lawsuit says. Lil Rod's lawsuit. In a not-so-shocking turn of events, considering all those bottles of baby oil, not all of Diddy's accusers are women. In fact, some of the most explosive allegations against the disgraced mogul came from a $30 million lawsuit filed by music producer Rodney Jones, aka Lil Rod, in February 2024. Now, Lil Rod isn't just a producer, he's also a videographer. And why is that important? Well, because he claims to have video footage of Diddy and his crew getting up to some seriously shady business, some of which involved minors. Lil Rod worked with Diddy on his 2023 album, Love, and during that time, he lived and traveled with him. The working relationship lasted for several months, which Lil Rod now considers one of the worst times of his life. To begin with, he claims Diddy made him work under some, unsettling conditions. More specifically, the rapper made Lil Rod record him while he was in the shower butt naked. When he wasn't in the shower, Diddy found other ways to make his producer uncomfortable. The lawsuit talks about Lil Rod being the victim of constant, unsolicited, and unauthorized groping and touching of his anus by Mr. Combs. On top of all that, Lil Rod claims that Diddy forced him to help procure sex workers for his freak-offs and threatened to harm him if he didn't do as he was told. But that's not all. One particularly disturbing incident detailed in the 73-page lawsuit took place in February 2023. Lil Rod allegedly woke up dizzy and naked to find himself in bed with Diddy and two sex workers. The worst part is, he had absolutely no memory of how he got there. Now, you might be wondering why Lil Rod didn't speak out earlier. The lawsuit has answers to that. Apparently, Diddy has some really effective scare tactics up his sleeves. He would often bring up his connections to powerful people in and out of the industry, threatening to blackball anyone who defied him. He also liked to show off his guns and even admitted to being responsible for a 1999 shooting involving a rapper named Shine. That one freaky audio. In his lawsuit, Lil Rod didn't just stop at sharing his own experience. If he had, it probably wouldn't be 73 pages long. He also spilled the beans on Diddy's relationships with some of the industry's most prominent people. A section of the suit claims that Diddy himself informed Lil Rod that he had sexual encounters with a rapper and R&B singer named Stevie J. Although Stevie J's name was mentioned, the name of the other two people were redacted, probably to protect their identities. But here's the kicker. A footnote contained in the lawsuit pretty much gives away the identity of the rapper. He is described as a Philadelphia rapper who dated Nicki Minaj. So much for staying anonymous. Philly's produced its fair share of rappers like Lil Uzi Vert, Freeway, and of course, Meek Mill. But as far as anyone knows, Meek Mill is the only Philly-born rapper who's been romantically linked to Nicki Minaj. The two were together for about 2 years before calling it quits in 2016. Nicki made the breakup official in January 2017 with a tweet. At around the same time fans were figuring out that Meek Mill could very well be the unnamed rapper mentioned in the lawsuit, an audio recording of two men, getting busy, very loudly, I might add, popped up online. If you're wondering how loud, well, you're about to hear for yourself. But if you'd rather not know, this is your 3-second warning to hit mute. Naturally, rumors began to spread that the voices in the recording belonged to none other than Meek Mill and Diddy. As if things weren't crazy enough already, a man who says he used to work as Diddy's bodyguard stepped forward, claiming he recorded the audio on his cell phone during one of Diddy's parties. Apparently, he was planning to use it as blackmail material later on, but he gave up on that idea when he realized no one would believe him. According to the man whose name we do not know, the drinks at the party were spiked, but he was unaffected because he didn't drink. He claims he was completely sober when he watched Diddy and Meek Mill walk into a room together minutes before the fun started. This version of events makes for a sensational story, but let's be real for a second. There's no actual proof that the voices on the tape belong to Diddy and Meek Mill. As you would expect, Meek Mill is not at all pleased by the rumors. He has made several tweets attempting to clear his name, but nothing seems to be working. Now he is looking to pay a team of investigators $100,000 to find out how he is connected to Diddy's case and why his name keeps popping up. It's the audio, man. It's the audio. There's that one picture with the matching shirts. Tier 4, Flavor Camp. If the accusations are true, Diddy is more than just a little fruity. But that's not the main focus here. Well, actually it kind of is. We'll get to that in a bit. In 1994, life was good. Diddy has made a name for himself, working as a producer and executive at Uptown Records. The year before, he had created his own label, Bad Boy Records, and it had begun making waves. But it wasn't a good year for everyone, especially Usher. At the time, he was in his early teens and had just secured a deal with L.A. Reid, the co-founder of LaFace. Young Usher was preparing for the release of his debut album when he lost his moneymaker. And by that, I mean his voice. He had puberty to thank for that. Given the new development, L.A. Reid started having reservations about working with Usher. He put the album on hold and even thought about cutting him loose altogether. But instead of pulling the plug, he decided to try something else. He sent him to live with Diddy for something called Flavor Camp. Remember how I said Diddy was already living the high life? Well, apparently he didn't mind taking younglings under his wing to teach them the ropes and show them how the 1% of the 1% in the industry live. So that spring, Usher packed his bags and moved into Diddy's New York home. It's the things he has said he witnessed during that time and the rumors about his own experience there that got a lot of people raising their eyebrows. In a 2004 interview with Rolling Stone, Usher admitted that living with Diddy gave him a real taste of the high life. He also got an eye-opening look at just how hot and heavy things can get in the industry. He said there were always girls around and that at any moment you could walk into a room and find 2 people getting it on, sometimes even a whole group of people. Usher was between 13 and 15 at this time, so you can see how that would be a problem. About a decade after the Rolling Stone interview, Usher told Howard Stern in an interview that living with Diddy was a wild ride. While he didn't spill all the juicy details about what he'd seen, he did mention that he came across quite a few curious things. Usher didn't hesitate to share how tough his time at Flavor Camp was, yet he seems to have nothing but love for Diddy. It's pretty ironic, especially because there are rumors flying around about Diddy taking advantage of him and being a PDF file. One person who's been at the forefront of the Diddy's a PDF file campaign is Gene Deal, the guy who claims to be Diddy's former bodyguard. In one interview, he went so far as to say that Diddy abused young Usher. He even recounted one incident that was so brutal it sent Usher to the hospital. Through all of this, Usher has made it clear that he respects Diddy and that they have a solid relationship. Almost too solid, especially when you think about that one video of them all sweaty and cozy. They were just singing and having a good time, but it's easy for people to take it out of context. The one with Justin Bieber. Usher wasn't the only young talent to attend Diddy's Flavor Camp. Yeah, that definitely has a weird ring to it. Justin Bieber went too, but in his case, things were a bit more complicated. Justin was just 13 when former marketing exec Scooter Braun discovered him. That same year, he was signed to Raymond Braun Music Group, a label Braun and Usher basically set up just for him. Now, if you're into conspiracy theories, there's one out there that claims Usher signed Justin just so he could hand him over to Diddy. As wild as that sounds, it kind of aligns with what happened next. About a year later, a video popped up on YouTube showing 15-year-old Justin hanging out with 39-year-old Diddy. Apparently, Usher had given the go-ahead for Justin to spend 48 hours with Diddy. And in that time, they are going to be doing secret fun stuff. No, seriously, Diddy actually said he couldn't disclose what they would be doing. Later on in the video, the pair decided they would start out by going out to get girls together. Anyone else weirded out? Just me? Yeah, that's what I thought. The 48-hour hangout marked the beginning of a very questionable series of events that involved Justin, Diddy, and activities that were far from age appropriate. In one video, Justin, who still looks underage, was offered alcohol by Diddy and another rapper. Fast forward a little over a year and another video pops up on YouTube. This time, Diddy's complaining that Justin hasn't been calling or hanging out as much. Justin tries to laugh it off, but he looks like a deer caught in headlights. After that awkward encounter, things didn't exactly go back to normal between Justin and Diddy. They were rarely seen together, so people assumed their unsettling friendship had fizzled out. But apparently, that wasn't the case. In 2014, when Khloe Kardashian was sharing the details of her night partying with Diddy and way too many naked people, she mentioned that Justin Bieber was there. He would have been around 19 at that time. And that was the last major piece of information about the two until 2023 when they worked together on a project. On more than one occasion, Justin has talked about his experience as a child star admitting that things weren't exactly smooth sailing. But he hasn't named names or mentioned any specific incidents. The club shooting. A lot of things we now know about Diddy are just accusations and charges he hasn't been convicted of yet. But this actually happened, and there's proof. Back in 1999, Diddy was in a relationship with Jennifer Lopez. He was a producer on her debut album, and that's when sparks started flying. One night in December that year, they decided to hit the club along with Diddy's then bodyguard Anthony Wolf Jones and 21-year-old rapper Jamal Shine Barrow, who we will call Diddy's protege. What started out as a good time quickly turned into not a good time. The group got into some sort of misunderstanding that ended with shots being fired, literally. After the shooting, Diddy, Lopez, and Diddy's bodyguard, who we call Wolf because it's a cool name, fled the scene. They led the police on a high-speed chase, but this isn't Fast and the Furious, so they soon got caught. And when they searched the car, police found a stolen gun. Eventually, all four of them were arrested and charged, but the charges against Lopez were dropped, leaving Diddy, the bodyguard, and the young rapper Shine to face the music. Get it? 3 people had been shot during the altercation, and so the trio faced charges related to gun possession. To make things worse, prosecutors claimed Diddy tried to bribe the driver of the car that left the nightclub, offering him $50,000 to take the fall for the gun. He didn't do it. The case went to trial, and after a few weeks, Combs and Jones were acquitted. Unfortunately, the third guy wasn't so lucky. He ended up in prison and was deported as soon as he got out. Diddy dodged prison time, but his legal troubles were just getting started. One of the victims, Natania Rubin, who claims Diddy himself did the shooting, wasn't about to let it slide. She was shot in the face, so it kind of makes sense that she took it personally. In 2008, she sued Diddy for $130 million. That didn't exactly go her way, but in 2011, he still ended up shelling out a small fortune to settle another lawsuit involving all 3 victims of the shooting. Now that Diddy's in hot water again, Natania's made it clear she's ready to do whatever it takes to help reopen the shooting case, even letting a doctor remove part of the bullet still lodged in her face from that night. The lawsuit filed by Lil Rod also mentions a club shooting. He claims that Diddy bragged to him about being able to shoot people and get away, and brought up that incident as a way to prove his point. 120 allegations. In the past year, about a dozen lawsuits have been thrown at Diddy, most accusing him of assault, usually the sexual kind. But that's nothing compared to the storm that's about to hit. It's open season on Diddy, and boy are people taking shots. Of course, it's possible that the news of his arrest has given many people the courage to speak out about their own experiences, but his lawyers are calling it a media circus. On October 1st, 2024, Texas attorney Tony Busby announced in a press conference that he's now representing over 100 people with sexual assault claims against Diddy. Yep, you heard right. To make things worse, 25 of them were under 18 at the time, with one reportedly as young as 9. According to the lawyer, Diddy promised the 9-year-old and his parents that he would make the boy a star. The Bad Boy founder then went on to do some seriously shady things to the young boy, and other people at the studio were apparently involved too. There's also the case of a 15-year-old who was flown to New York to attend a Diddy party, where things took a dark turn. In addition to children, Busby claims that pregnant women were also not safe around Diddy. He's accusing Diddy of drugging a pregnant woman at a dinner and then taking her back to his place. There's also the thing with horse tranquilizers. Diddy apparently used them to sedate his victims. On top of his impressive entertainment career, Diddy also seems to have a pretty prolific criminal background. But hey, the law says he's innocent until proven guilty. So let's just keep our fingers crossed and wait for the court to